Bradford City haven't been able to live up to expectation in recent years. They've struggled on the pitch in League Two, but last season they got into the playoffs under Mark Hughes. Has Mark Hughes' footballing expertise and experience been a route for Bradford City to make the progress they need and get back into League One and beyond? Or could next season be a tricky one for Bradford City with the competition of the league? Lots of talking points to get into in this EFL Debate Summer Deep Dive. And I'm delighted to be joined by a plethora of Bradford City fans, Chris, Jack and George. Thanks for coming on, gents. How are we?
Very well, thanks. Good to be on, Gab. Cheers.
Yeah, no, it's great to speak to you all sort of on here rather than on Twitter. So yeah, great to have you on. We should say just before we really get into it that this is also available on YouTube and on Spotify. So if you're watching or listening on those platforms, give subscribe because it really helps us out. There's already been a few other clubs summer deep dives uploaded onto those platforms, so you can go and check those out once you're done with this one. Coming to you first of all, then, Chris, how do you reflect on last season?
I suppose you've got to say it's a massive improvement on previous seasons. The football probably was difficult to watch at times. That passing style, playing it out from the back, it's very rare you see that in League Two. And I've been following City. I'm 52 years old. I've been following City since I was 4 years old. I think it's the first time we've seen that style of football that I can remember at Bradford. So yeah, it was difficult at times to watch, and some of the fans got impatient. But yeah, it was. I think it was a massive improvement on what we'd had previously, and I'm optimistic going into this season.
Where do you stand on Mark Hughes then, Jack? Do you feel like he's done a good job considering where Bradford City were in the previous season under Derek Adams, or are you a little bit underwhelmed by the football on display?
I thought that he brought the fans back together into the club. Firstly, like the crowds improved. I thought, especially the away performances, they were a lot better than usual. As under Gary Bowyer, we won 3 away in one season, and we were losing to any team in the league comprehensively. But as Chris said, it is slow, and we didn't seem to bring much energy in midfield whatsoever compared to the teams at the top. And when Leighton Orient came last year of the season, we saw they were moving about really quickly, and they didn't really seem to be in the best gear either. So I think it just needs to improve in midfield for him to sort of prove himself, or he could be struggling.
Yeah, for sure. And coming to you on that, George, there's been a couple of additions in midfield already. Alex Patterson has come in from Harrogate and Kevin McDonald from Exeter. Patterson's obviously a very dynamic, energetic midfielder who likes to drive forward, and Kevin McDonald's more of a metronomic influence at the base. I'm not expecting you to have seen loads of either of those players, but on a kind of surface value, are you encouraged by those additions?
Yeah, for sure. I think Alex in particular looks quite an exciting signing, to be fair. And I think we need somebody in that position as well, because obviously we do have Jamie Walker, who's a fantastic player on his day, but he does have a bit of inconsistency issues in terms of his performances. Some games he'll be really good. The next
Can you
game
be deeper on why that is, George?
I think the injuries definitely don't help. So he's got a bit of an injury problem. So I think being in and out of the squad doesn't particularly help in terms of getting that rhythm of form going. But yeah, I don't really know why, to be honest, why it's particularly his form is particularly sort of off and on. It's just he's just one of those players, and I guess that's why he's in this division with us, to be honest, is that inconsistency.
What's required, do you think, Chris, for players like Jamie Walker to go from being this inconsistent player to being consistently one of the top players in the division? Because we've seen in the second half of the 21-22 season where he really made an impact, and probably the latter stages of the last season, what he can do on his day. He just needs to have his day more regularly, doesn't he?
I think his fitness is the main thing. If we can get a full season out of him, I think you'll see the consistency. also, I think we were lacking in midfield last season. And I think Jamie Walker spent too much time dropping back and trying to win the ball in midfield rather than the ball being progressed through to him to then make chances or take chances himself. I think the addition of Patterson will really help. And I think, hopefully, most City fans are hoping we get a bit of pace on the wings. Harry Chapman fit he was a big loss towards the end of last season.
Was he?
Creativity-wise, we really struggled when he got injured in that Swindon game.
You think he's more than a ball carrier, Harry Chapman, then, Chris?
He's a ball carrier, yeah, that's right. But I think he frightened defenders when he was playing out on the wing. I think he struggled when he played at number 10. It's not his natural position. You could see when he went back out onto the wing, he was thriving, and he's not scared to take a player on. And he'd probably lose the ball 2 or 3 times, but it's just that one bit of magic that you need that comes off. And I think him fit, but we definitely need some pace in the team. We really struggled with that last season.
Yeah, absolutely. And coming to you on that, Jack, Andy Cook obviously had a great season, and we'll probably come on to him in more detail in future. But Chris's point there was that maybe that bit of raw pace was something City's attack was desperately lacking last season.
I mean, yes, with Cook's goals, he scored 28, I think it was, in the league, but over half of them were from headers, and it was from set-piece delivery that improved towards the end of the season, I thought. But we're missing the people running off him, because in previous years, like if you throw it back to, obviously, James Hansen, he was the target man we had before, but we had small strikers running off them, whereas now we've had...
Nicky Wells.
Yeah, he was unreal for the league, but now we don't have anyone running off him. We sort of thought players like Walker and Chapman, they were taking players on, but they weren't getting close enough to him, so they weren't getting involved in the goals. So it sort of made our attack a bit one-dimensional, and if they could stop Cook, they could stop us, which led us to obviously lose or draw more games when we should have been winning them.
Yeah, and I suppose, George, that's almost a credit to Andy Cook, because not only was he this target man presence for Bradford City, but also he was able to carry the attack at times with moments of individual magic. We all saw the goal against Gillingham, which was absolutely wondrous. But it felt like a lot of responsibility was placed on Andy Cook. And I think for someone who's 32, getting on a bit now, you don't want to be putting too much pressure on him. You want to dilute that pressure and bring in some pace and fresh legs into the attack so that you're not too one-dimensional, as Jack and Chris have alluded to.
Yeah, I've got to completely agree with what Jack and Chris have said so far, especially the pace part of it. I think it's just so slow. It's not even the attack, it's the defence as well. It's pretty slow. We only really have one pacey defender, and that's Odesina, and he doesn't get played at all, to be honest. He's sort of, I've noticed with Hughes' teams where players just seem to get frozen out and they don't really get a chance to get back in the team. I'm thinking of Odesina, Young, East, all these players that I think, to be fair, do definitely offer something to the squad, but they just don't get a chance. And I think completely.
If you don't mind, I'd like to explore the Odesina, because I was speaking to a Hartlepool fan last season, and he was absolutely outstanding for them. I think he won 5 Man of the Match awards at home in a row. So clearly, this is a really good League Two defender, and yet for whatever reason, it hasn't worked out at Bradford City, George.
Yeah, I mean, we've only briefly seen him, to be honest. He's barely being played, but when we have seen him, at least in my opinion, I've found he has been a bit shaky on the ball. He wasn't as confident as Critchlow or Platt on the ball versus basically the competition on the team. So that could be one of the primary reasons why he wasn't being played or favoured by Hughes, was just that, I don't know, he felt a bit panicky, because obviously we play out of the back, and one of our weaknesses, to be honest, is if the team comes at us, presses us, we start to melt down a little bit. So I think, having him there, it was just kind of like it didn't always work. It was quite good if we were sort of sitting it back and launching it back, and if they were coming at us in the counter, he was quite useful then. But yeah, in terms of in possession, I don't think he's as strong as the alternatives in our team.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think Bradford City's defence is going to look like next season, Chris?
Well, that's interesting, Gab, and what you're saying there about Odesina. I heard from, I don't know if it's the same Hartlepool fan you're on about, Grant, and he said Odesina was fantastic in a back three, but in a four, he said he was awful. He said he really struggled. He said, but in a three, he was fantastic. He's got the security of two good defenders, and he's got the pace. And I wonder if that's what Hughes is looking at this season, bringing in Ash Taylor, who's got no pace, Sam Stubbs, fantastic defender, got no pace. So I wonder if Odesina in a three at the back might be maybe given more of a chance. He played, I think, was it Chef Wednesday in the AFL Trophy last season, had a really good game. And then I think he played against Burton and he was awful. And he never really got a chance after that. But as I say, from what I've heard previously, if you play him in a three centre-backs, he's outstanding, but he can't play as one of two centre-backs.
Interesting. So, Jack, I mean, if it's going to be a change of formation next season, which Chris alluded to as a possibility, is that's going to have implications in terms of where you recruit? I mean, does that maybe make more sense, the signing of someone like Clark-Adore, for instance?
I think that signing makes a lot of sense for the fact, A, his pace, which we've lacked and we've discussed, but he said himself he's quite a versatile player. He can go from anything between left wing back and a number 10 or a right winger. So I think it gives a Hughes a bit more freedom. Rather than last season. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, we've had some internet connections there. I don't suppose it's possible for you to have a little fiddle with that, or possibly look at a different device, because we've had some internet connection issues. If you could maybe have a look into that, that would be much appreciated. George, coming on to you, how are you feeling about the recruitment in general so far? Obviously, you signed Clark-Adore, who a few years ago at Barnsley I thought was really good, but obviously hasn't had things his own way since then. So how are you feeling on recruitment so far generally?
Yeah, so obviously we've re-signed Cook and Rydal on new contracts from last season, and Cook is obviously fantastic signing. Glad to get him back. Rydal, he's okay, but I don't think Rydal's the left back that we would need to get promotion. I think that proved it last season. I just don't think he was fully up to it. I think he'd be good as a backup, but not massive fan personally. Kevin McDonald sees like a DM centre mid from what I've gathered. Don't know much about him, but he's quite old. He's got quite a lot of experience. He's probably going to bring something that we need in terms of that leadership and being there and done it. I think he's got a couple of promotions in the past, so I think that's something, to be honest, Gab, that we were missing last season is that leadership, especially that final goal where Carlisle scored ridiculously when we brought on another defender and they just sort of head it straight in as soon as we do that. I just think there was just complete lack of communication and leadership on that pitch at the time. And I think, to be fair, if we'd have got through to the penalty shootout or something there, I think it'd have been complete robbery. So, but to be honest, it's a bit. I've been all right with the transfers so far. I just don't think we've had anything other than maybe Patterson. I think we've just got a new one actually, which I haven't been able to look at. Other than Patterson and maybe Clark-Adore, I'm not so sure yet, especially with all the teams around us and the competition that's going to be in this league next season.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not. I'm not mad on it. I think Alex Patterson is definitely the one that I'm most excited about. I think Kevin McDonald could be a steady addition. But I mean, in terms of midfield, Chris, I felt with Bradford last season, there was something um, a little bit jumbled, perhaps, because you had a winger by trade in Alex Gilead converted into a central midfielder, and okay, Gilead actually did a decent job with that role, but it's probably not his natural position. He's kind of had to adjust to that. And then we talk about Richie Smallwood, for example. He's been a destroyer all of his career, and all of a sudden, people are saying he's got to be the more creative player. And has that ever really been his game? I'm not so sure. And then you mentioned earlier that Harry Chapman has played as the number 10 when actually he's a winger. And it just feels like there's a few cases of square pegs in round holes. And for me, that's something that Mark Hughes has got to look at and fix next season.
Totally agree, Gab. While we're talking about recruitment, it's just come up on my phone, and my son's just coming in and told me we've signed Tyler Smith on a 3-year deal.
Okay.
Which maybe suggests to me that it could be a change in formation if we're going to be playing Smith alongside Cook up front.
3-5-2, possibly.
Midfield, yes, I agree. It was very jumbled last season. We had a massive turnover of players. I think we brought 17 players in. Smallwood was signed, as you say, as a destroyer in front of the back four. And then as the season progressed with injuries, and he was asked to play right of a diamond or left of the diamond, and he was asked to be creative, and it wasn't his game. You could see that, which I think that's one of the main reasons I think Patterson has been brought in. I think Ryan East, I don't know if Hughes wasn't confident that East had the experience to play more games, or he didn't see it in training from him. I mean, I don't know what the other two guys think, but every time East came on, he never let us down, and he looked like a decent player. Hopefully he'll get more minutes this season. As for Kevin McDonald, as you know, I'm maybe a couple of years older than these two guys, George and Jack. I remember Kevin McDonald coming to play against City for Wolves. Fantastic midfield player. At the time, he was probably more of a box-to-box midfielder.
Yeah.
With the troubles that he's had with his kidney, and as age has caught up with him, his game's changed, but fantastic player. I know that Exeter were hoping that he'd re-sign with them this season, the Exeter fans anyway, and they were quite disappointed that he's left. So I'm quite looking forward to him. I don't know if it's true that he was the first choice in January. It never came off. I know that he came to City and trained a couple of days, and I don't know if that's why we ended up signing Adam Clayton. But I think the first choice at the time was McDonald. So, but yeah, I'm quite looking forward to seeing McDonald play. From what I've seen, and I've seen him quite a lot over the years, very good footballer. And at 6'4", he'll be a threat in the box, which we, apart from Andy Cook, we've really struggled. No goals from centre backs. I know that Stubbs and Critchlow got one each towards the end of the season, but we're expecting a bit more than that. So, yeah, hopefully he'll stay fit and prove his worth. He's had 2 years out of football with his liver complaint, so I know he's 34 years old, but I think he's really raring to go, and he wants to make up for that time that he's missed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think having someone who can collect the ball off the defence and spray it around could be a massive plus for Bradford City, because I didn't necessarily see that player last season. Jack, Tyler Smith, Chris mentioned, is a signing for Bradford City. So this is a bit of an ad hoc question that I wasn't expecting to ask. But do you think that there's a possibility of Mark Hughes going for 3-5-2 next year and pairing Andy Cook with Tyler Smith, because he's a very nippy, energetic striker who likes to sort of get in beyond?
I think more the way the signings are going, there's a bigger chance of it. So I think with Patterson as a number 8, as you said, he likes to attack the sort of fullback to centre-back area. So he could be on that sort of left-hand side with Smallwood as a DM, and even maybe East to the right-hand side. And as you say, with the two strikers, I think we could have so much more versatile options up front. rather than just the same football every week and hoping we were 1-0. Because one thing I noticed last season, not sure if everyone else agrees, we never dominated any side. No matter who came to the ground, it was always 1-0, 2-1. Whereas you see some of the teams winning 4-0, 5-0 even. We're never dominant at home, and we need to change that, because you can brag about crowds if we want to, but we drew 11 games out of 23 at home, and it's not good enough for promotion side, and that's what needs to change, really.
I mean, coming to you on that, George, I felt like last season Bradford's fullbacks weren't quite at the level, especially for a side aspiring to finish in the top three. I think Brad Halliday's a solid, reliable right back. But I don't think he's necessarily offers quite enough going forward, especially when you want to try and break teams down. I think Chris has already touched on maybe not having enough at left back last season. I'm not sure Matty Folds or Liam Ridehalgh ever quite cut the mustard. It's not like we're talking about sort of awful players here, but it just feels like if for Bradford City to be aspiring to that next level, for me, the fullback areas or wing backs, as it might be, that's got to be strengthened.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you touched on with Halliday, I think he was actually really, really good. And to be honest, I was surprised he didn't get injured based on his injury record. So we definitely need some backup in that position, to be honest, for this season, because I think it was a miracle that he didn't get injured throughout that season. I think he had one game or two where he was out, and that was towards the end. And when he was missing, we really did start to suffer, to be honest, in terms of that defensive backline that we had and the strength that we had there. So yeah, I think I completely agree. I think we definitely need improvements in fullbacks. To be honest, we've been shouting for improvements in the fullbacks for years, but we just don't seem to really get anybody who quite works. We've had people in the past that have looked quite promising, or have then got like season-long injuries, or have just not really clicked with us, and it's just a bit of a shame, really. But yeah, just don't know. Don't really know what to say much about that, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just we've got what we've got, and we've got to do what we can.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. Chris, I've got to talk to you about Andy Cook, because he had a fantastic season last year, didn't he?
Oh, outstanding. I think the boys will all agree we'd have finished 14th or 15th without Cookie's goals last season, because it never looked like goals were going to come from anywhere else. I think Oliver was brought in to be Mark Hughes' number 9 last season, and it just didn't work out. And I think Cookie took that as a challenge and really raised his game. I don't think his finishing ability's ever been in doubt, but the season, to put a season together like that, was outstanding. And I know that there was a few City fans were up in arms at Christmas after the Carlisle game when Hughes left him out, mainly because the goals were coming from nowhere else. But I think Cookie's agreed that the rest did him good. In those 5 games, he did come on as sub for sort of 10, 15-minute slots here and there. But I think he was getting tired, and you could see he was getting tired. When he got back in, I think he scored 10 games on the bounce. And I think it was a bit of a masterstroke from Hughes. He could see, and obviously Hughes has played in that position. He knows what a striker needs, when he's tired, and if he needs a break out of the team. And I think it really worked. Could have gone one or two ways. He could have sulked, and it could have been the end of his season, but he didn't. He took it as a challenge and really came back firing.
Yeah, all credit to Andy Cook. If it is going to be 2 up top next season, that leaves you with a couple of possible formations. I can't see it being 4-4-2, a flat 4-4-2 myself. So we're either looking at 3-5-2 or the 4-4-2 diamond, Jack. In either case, you're probably going to need fullbacks that are really happy to get forward and attack. And that kind of makes me wonder, I mean, is there a possibility in which Brad Halliday adjusts to playing on the right of a back three rather than as a right back? Because I would say that might suit him more in a 3-5-2 than possibly as a wing back.
I'm just not sure if he'd fit in as centre back, especially in the way we play. I think that would be more when Odesina would come back into the team. I think Stubbs is a starter and possibly even a captain in the side. And then you're going to have, if he doesn't leave, Matty Platt will play. And if it was a 3-back, you'd probably say Odesina would come back in. But last season towards the end, we saw a bit of a different side to Halliday. He was getting forward a bit more, putting some more crosses in. He even got a goal we saw last day of the season. So I think he could probably still do the job as a right wing back, but it was more like the left wing back I'd be more concerned about. I wouldn't know whether he'd be playing Clark O'Dwyer there and having a bit more attacking lopsided formations, like a 4-back at the back and Clark O'Dwyer going forward, or maybe we're in for another left back. But I think that would be the side I'd be more concerned about rather than Halliday.
That makes sense, George. Jack, do you think, George, there is going to be another left wing back coming in?
I hope so, to be honest. But we're getting to a point where I think we're starting to sort of close up on how many we're going to bring in, because we've already had the CEO, Ryan Sparks, say that we're not going to be bringing in a massive squad this year in comparison to last. So there's going to be a bit of trimming of numbers. So I really don't know how many we're going to bring in, because we've already brought in, I believe 6, 7 now. So it's and we've got 3 academy players who've been sort of given a. Is it 5?
I think it's 5.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so we've already brought in a number of signings now, and I just don't know if we're going to bring that many more in, which is kind of why I'm a bit worried, and I think other fans are feeling a bit. Is this really going to work this season? Because it just doesn't feel like we've improved the squad enough to get into that, at least the playoffs and automatics. So there is, to be fair, there is a spine there, and we have made some decent signings in terms of Patterson and this Taylor guy coming in, and McDonald, based on what Chris has said. So I think there's something there, and we were kind of last season. Well, we weren't amazing to watch at times, like Chris has already alluded to. That we were just sort of steadily getting by with those 1-0s, 2-0s. Hughes quite like that controlled sort of gameplay. Doesn't like the 5-0, 4-0 games. I know Jack was saying that we needed to score most, but I just don't think that's going to happen under Hughes' football. I think he's very considerate with the way that we hold the ball and keep it in our side, and we don't just go gung ho for the goals. So I think there was only Stevenage really where we were scoring quite a lot of goals. Both Stevenage home and away was the only time we actually beat a team with 3 goals. So
that's funny, isn't it? A Stevenage got automatic with a really solid team. So that's one of those football League 2 quirks, I think we'll call it. Chris, George mentioned there Ryan Sparks as CEO, and I suppose that brings me on to the operational side of Bradford City. What I've felt for quite a long time from afar is Bradford are missing that experience-wise footballing head upstairs. I suppose Mark Hughes provides it to an extent as a manager, but do you think Bradford City are well run now, or better run than they have been? Do you think they've got the potential to go further under the current model, or how are you feeling about things?
Absolutely, we're better run than we have been in the past. I think that's clear to see, especially from people around the club. Fans can see that. However, we've got 2 big issues really. We don't own the ground, and we don't have a training ground. Which makes the club try to sell the club, which I don't know whether Stefan Rupp wants to sell the club or not. But if he does, if we owned our own ground and we had a training ground, I think it'd be a lot easier asset to sell. Whether that detracts, puts people off. I think we do need an older football head. Sort of I'm not expecting a director of football at League 2 level, but someone.
I don't know. I think that's becoming more common than it was actually, Chris.
Yeah.
Sporting directors coming in. Barrow have got a sporting director now. I think there's well-run clubs nowadays that do operate with that model.
Yeah, but I definitely think that's holding us back. But I think Ryan Sparks is taken a lot of criticism. And I think a lot of it's fair. but a lot of it's unfair. I think he's learning from his mistakes all the time. He was very visible on social media initially when he first took over, and it was too much. And he was saying what he was going to do and how we were going to do this and do that. He's reined that in a lot recently, and I think he's really improved. But it just seems to be that, and I don't know if there's a lack of funds or we're just, I mean, if we look at this transfer window, we're giving a lot of players 2 or 3 year contracts, which I'm all for, especially if the younger players, and we want that stability. But it keeps the line that's coming from the club is we're a self-sufficient club, which says to me that the owner doesn't want to put money in to get us promoted and to get us up the league. So yeah, it's a strange one. I don't know what the answer is.
And I also think that being a self-funded club of Bradford City's size would have been fine in a previous era. You'd have got out the league no problem because you'd have been able to blow teams out of the water. Whereas now in League Two, there's going to be a lot more external investment. You've got your Gillinghams, you've got your Wrexhams, clubs that are willing to spend money. And I think there's definitely challenges that come with that, which brings me to a question for you, Jack, which is Stefan Rupp's main strength not being Edin Rahic, or do you feel like he has genuine strengths that serve him well as Bradford City owner?
I mean, recently he sort of seems to have stabled the ship alongside Sparks from the Rahic era, where the fans were really unsettled. A lot of people weren't renewing season tickets, and I feel like they managed to sort of bring a bit of stability to the club in recent years. But I'm not sure if other people agree, but I sort of think I see a lot of owners, especially at the Gillingham, they're quite present at the moment, and they're quite outspoken how they're going to make things happen at their clubs. But we see Rupp, I'd say, once a season at Valley Parade, and that'll be in a random time, like even the playoffs. And I just feel like we need a little bit more commitment from him if he's to go forward. If not, maybe it's time to sell up and try and have a fresh start.
What do you think, Judge?
I think it's so when he took over the club, we were doing quite well. We made that fantastic run in the EFL Cup, and we were we were on the verge of going up to the Championship at the time. And then obviously the German ownership comes in with Stefan and Edin, and then Edin gets sort of overly involved, starts to sort of take over the club in terms of not being able to manage anybody, not being able to give out different tasks to people to do. It's just it's almost like Football Manager for him. He started to do everything, and as that happened, it sort of, and as the good players from the Parkinson era started to leave, it started to implode. So I think from that point where it was imploding and we got relegated from League One, I think we have definitely improved it, especially commercially. I think we're doing pretty well from what I've seen. But yeah, I have to agree. I don't think we're going to get that additional funding that we need to sort of propel us out of this league. It's going to come down to good recruitment and getting the right people in at the top that can sort of manage who's coming in and stuff like that. Because obviously we brought in Stephen Gent. I think it was it last season last season. So he's sort of our head of recruitment now, and he's been working alongside Mark Hughes to bring in the players. And last season we were quite excited because there was quite a lot of new faces, and we've seen these players that essentially Stephen Gent had brought in with his name. So I think for example, Smallwood was probably one of those signings we probably wouldn't have got without Stephen Gent, because he sort of knew him from the Middlesbrough squad and things like that. So yeah, I don't know about this ownership. He's definitely open to offers, because as you've probably seen with Crawley, they got bought by the Bitcoin boys, which I think we dodged a bullet there. But thankfully, he did actually reject that offer from them. So I do think we're in decent hands in terms of responsibility. It's just I just don't think he's got the ambition for us to go up for where we believe we want to be.
Yeah,
So yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think, I think it was a good thing that you dodged the crypto bullet with Crawley, but certainly feels like it could do with some fresh investment and possibly fresh ideas. But good that you've got head recruitment in place so that the manager has some support. One way as a sort of self-funded club to develop some money is to gain some income is to develop players, and you've got a decent crop, I would venture, coming through the academy, because there's a striker called Youmbi who's been given a professional contract, Chris. Are the hopes quite high for him?
Yeah, he's done really well in the youth teams. There's Dylan Youmbi. There's 3 lads who've been offered contracts again this season. Bobby Poynton in midfield and Harvey Rowe, who's a defender. And out of the 3, I'd expect maybe Harvey Rowe to maybe force his way in.
Oh, interesting. Have you been able to see him yet?
Pardon?
Sorry, have you been able to see him yet, Harvey Rowe?
A little bit. He was injured a little bit last season, but I think maybe that's where I think with Poynton in midfield. I think he's an attacking midfielder. Whether there's room for him to get in this squad, I don't know. He was out on loan last season, as was Dylan Youmbi in non-league, and I think going forward this season, I think we did really well in the. Well, I say really well. We did well with Scott Banks and Tyreek Wright last season in the loan window, and I think towards the end of the transfer window, I think that's maybe where Mark Hughes is looking to bring in maybe some wide pace. I think Tyreek Wright, he'd not got rave reviews before he came to us, and he was outstanding. I know he's gone to Plymouth and it's not worked out for him. And it's just, I mean, we had Darragh Costello came in from Burnley, thought he was going to be great, didn't work out.
Yeah.
So I think
I was surprised by
that's
that.
the chance you take in the loan window, isn't it? With the loans. But I definitely can see us bringing in a couple of loans. And if they're as successful as Wright and Banks, then I think this division's going to be really difficult this season. The standard's going to be a lot higher than it was last season. From the teams that have come up and down, and the teams that have improved within the division, Gillingham with the cash that they've got. So I think the standard's going to be a lot higher, and we really need to perform. But on the other hand, teams are going to be taking points off each other because the standard's going to be so high. So you never know.
Yeah, absolutely. Coming to you on that then, Jack, I suppose I've kind of picked up from this conversation that there isn't exactly a sense of sort of buoyant optimism in the Bradford City fan base that maybe a lot of outsiders would expect. So is there a sense of maybe a little bit of trepidation about next season, given what Chris has discussed there, which is the division is going to be strengthened?
I think it's more, we understand that they built a foundation for a side that could go up, but we don't seem to be making that big stride that the other teams around us are making with signings like McGoldrick even for Notts County. I'm not expecting a signing of that calibre, but we're sort of waiting for something to happen just to sort of boost our chances in even attacking side. So we know we've got the spine, but the loan market often waits till even deadline day, and we don't want to start the season again after 5 or 6 games, having about 6 points, and then be chasing the pack all season like we were last season. Because we need to see signs of improvement. We need to see a side that knows how to win games. So I think everyone's just sort of, after the Carlisle disappointment, they're a bit holding back on some optimism. They're sort of waiting for Hughes to prove himself to us, rather than us thinking it's Mark Hughes. I think he's had his season where everyone was like, well, he's a Premier League manager. Whereas this season, people are like, he needs to prove himself to keep the job. So it's sort of like it's flipped a bit after the playoffs.
That's interesting. Yeah, so it's like there's a different sort of lens on it now, which is going to bring its own pressures. Harry Lewis, though, is one of Mark Hughes' signings who was a roaring success. Arguably the best goalkeeper in League Two last season, although I'm not... you tell Leyton Orient fans that you'll get a bit of stick. But George, he had a great season last year, didn't he?
Oh yeah, he's phenomenal. He's phenomenal, Gab. I remember. I think I tweeted at you with a bunch of stats that I found about him. Doing really, really well. I think, to be fair, he's confident on the ball. He's very confident for his age. You wouldn't sort of expect that kind of leadership that he's got in terms of for his age and not really having any experience. Because he came straight out of Southampton, straight to us, and we were just like, I guess this might work out. It might go horribly. We didn't really know what to expect with him. So maybe that helps in terms of our the opinions that we formed on him in terms of how he's performed this season or last season. Sorry. But yeah, he is a really, really good keeper. I think the other thing he probably needs to improve is his kicking. I think his kicking at times is a bit weak, especially when we're going long ball or switching it up to long ball. It's just it either goes out of play or it just goes straight to the opposition, and it's not. I don't know if he was a bit aimless or just not as good at times. So that's probably something he needs to definitely improve. But honestly, if he improves his kicking, I think he could be at least a championship keeper. He's definitely miles above most of the keepers in this league, or at least last year, in terms of his ability. So yeah, fantastic keeper, and so glad we've held on for him for now. Obviously, this is going to bite me in the arse, but hopefully, we can keep on to him because he's one of our shining lights.
Yeah, I think keeping hold of Harry Lewis and Andy Cook is so far, I think, a real plus for Bradford City, Chris. And in that vein, I wanted to ask you the question, which is, I've got to make my 1 to 24 predictions in a few weeks. I've obviously had a bit of stick off Bradford City fans for my predictions previously. So I wanted to come to you and ask, what would be the reason for me to be massively in favour of Bradford City going on and finishing in the top 3 and having a great season?
Gab, I've been a Bradford City fan long enough. Never be too optimistic. Aim low, and then if we outperform ourselves, fantastic. I think last season, especially with all the signings we might use coming in, there was too much HMS pissed the league. City fans thought we were going to win the title, and it doesn't work like that. And especially if you've been a City fan as long as I have, then you've got to temper it.
Sure. What are your reasons for optimism then? Put it that way.
My reasons for optimism are, I think the targeted recruitment this time. I think Patterson, Hughes has realised what he needs to get out of this division. He had the season before, he had a couple of months at the end of the season when he took over from Derek Adams. He'd only ever managed in the Premier League before then. He's coming to League Two, which is, you could say it's a different sport to Premier League football, couldn't you? EFL football.
Sure.
And so he's had to learn as he's gone along. Obviously, he's got massive experience both as a player and as a manager. And he's made mistakes. And I think he won't say it publicly, but behind closed doors, I think he knows where he's made mistakes. And I think he'll learn from those. I think he made mistakes in the playoffs. But I think we'll see a different mindset from him this season. And I think the team, I'm hoping, especially at home, because previously we've not been bad at home. Home form's been okay. And last season, I think that was really our Achilles heel. We were fantastic away from home. If our home form had been half as good as our away form, we'd be having this chat now as a League One team. But it wasn't. It was awful. And we seemed to freeze at home too many times. We'd go in front in games and then we'd bottle it. But this season, I think we'll learn from that. I think we've kept he's kept the players that he wants to keep. He's got rid of the players that he doesn't think will progress us and get us promoted. And I think the players that he's bringing in are going to make a difference. So my prediction is, if we finish above the bottom third, fantastic. I don't want to aim any higher than that, and anything more than that, then no, I'm joking. I think we're going to have a good chance, but it's going to be a lot more difficult than last season. Last season was an ideal opportunity to get out of League Two. if you were a half decent team, you'd get out of League Two last season, and we weren't a half decent team at home. We were away, but away at home we weren't half decent, and that's why we're still in League Two.
Yeah, well, hopefully the club can rectify those issues. Jack, how far off do you think you are from the squad that's going to kick off on the opening day? How many more additions do you think are required?
I think if you're assuming this new striker is going to be a starting striker, I think we are at 2 or 3 signings off a competitive starting 11. I think we need a fullback, and a fullback who can go up and down, which is something we're not a stranger to at Valley Parade. We've had many a good fullback across the recent years, but I think we also need at least a new winger, maybe probably 2, which we think will come from the loan market. I think it's much more the wide positions than the central positions now. I think the central positions we've got a side who could compete near the top, but it's just the danger on the width and causing a few teams to panic a bit or attacking slow fullbacks. We need more of that to be a good side this season.
Yeah, again, I think it comes back down, George, to whether or not the wide players will be in the form of wing backs or natural wingers. But certainly the quality that you got from Scott Banks last season, you could do with someone like that who can just create something out of nothing in the final third.
Yeah, for sure. I think we don't really have any. I don't think we really have any wingers. We have Young, of course, but I think he's probably going to be on his way out. To be honest, I really doubt we'll see him again at the club. To be honest, it feels like there's a bit of a break up there between him and Hughes, and I don't think he particularly performed amazingly well at Barrow. I think he's a bit of a mixed opinion on how well he played. So
the best game he had at Valley Parade was for Forest Green Rovers.
yeah, that's true. Yeah. So, but I don't. Yeah, he's got to go. To be honest, just not because I dislike him or because I don't think he's any good. I think from the times we've seen him, there's something there. There's definitely a player there. It's just I just don't think it's going to work out with us. So, yeah, we definitely need a left winger and a right winger, because I think on the right wing, I think all we have, to be honest, is Osadibe on the right at the moment. I could be wrong on that. But on the left, obviously, we've got Chapman and Young. But yeah, we definitely need that area strengthening, unless he's just not going to play wingers and play maybe Clark on the left and like, I don't know, Halliday on the right, and just do it that way or something like that. I don't know, to be honest. It depends how he's going to set up. Maybe he's just going to ditch the wingers entirely and just go with loads of strikers. Maybe play Walker and this Patterson as a second striker, which he did occasionally do with Walker last season in terms of, I think, in the Carlisle game at home. Obviously, there was that goal where Cook knocked it on for Walker, and Walker put it away. So that's, I think, Jack was saying we needed more of that. And we definitely do, because there's just not enough goals across the team. It's all reliant on one man.
What I would say, though, is that Walker behind Tyler Smith and Andy Cook could be quite fun, whether that's part of a diamond or whether that's part of a sort of 3-4-1-2. That could be something Mark Hughes looks at. So we'll have to see. Listen, gents, thank you so much for your time. It's been such a pleasure chatting Bradford City with you this evening. My thanks go out to Chris, to Jack, to George from the Bantams. Thanks to you for watching at home as well. Hope you've enjoyed it, this Bradford City summer deep dive, and we'll see you again on EFL Debate very, very soon.
Cheers, Gab.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me.